This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Apple's expected to announce the iPhone 11 this week, so here's 103 facts you might not know about the iPhone. Steve Jobs did not set out to make an iPhone, he wanted to make a tablet. Dad didn't want me? But when he saw how cool the interface was, he thought it would make a killer phone. Of course he did, I knew that all along. The first iPhone was released on June 29th, 2007, the same day the Globe Theatre burned down in London. Well, 400 years after that. The iPhone was announced several months earlier at the Macworld conference in January of that same year. Unfortunately, the Macworld Expo is dead. I pour out a 40 for you every January, buddy. At the time, the iPod was a runaway hit. It was a huge success, and it played a big role in Apple's comeback from near bankruptcy in the 90s. The iPhone would end up killing the poor little iPod. There was a lot of skepticism about the iPhone when it was first launched. No 3G, no expandable memory, no removable battery, no exchange or office support. Now, of course, a lot of those concerns seem silly now, but the speed and connectivity was not. For that first iPhone, it was horrible. Connections were slow, calls were dropped, and it greatly taxed AT&T's network. Why not just switch to Verizon? Well, in the early years, the iPhone was only available on AT&T. Verizon had the chance to be the carrier of choice, but turned Apple down. They wanted more control over the hardware. The tablet project that kicked off the iPhone's development started because Steve hated a manager at Microsoft. This manager was always bragging about how Microsoft was going to own tablet computing. Apple had been thinking about phones. They worked with Motorola and made the Rocker. Jobs hated it. Steve Jobs hated a lot of things. You know who Jobs didn't hate? Johnny Ive, Apple's lead product designer who led the iPhone design team. Johnny Ive, not to be confused with Johnny Hive, who died several years earlier in an unfortunate accident. The first iPhone model was available with a 4GB hard drive in its lowest configuration. But that didn't last long. The 4GB model was discontinued 2 months later on September 5th, 2007. And at that time, the 8GB model had its price cut by a third from $599 US to $399 US, which means the 8GB model was now $100 less than what the 4GB model had been just a few weeks early. And people were mad. Apple ended up giving early buyers a $100 Apple gift store credit to say, sorry. Apple went on to sell 4 million iPhones in 2007. Today, Apple sells that many iPhones every 5 days. That's around 849,450 iPhones a day, give or take. In 2018 alone, Apple shipped 217.72 million iPhones worldwide. The iPhone was originally intended to have a plastic screen like many other smartphones of its time. Steve Jobs complained after the demo unit developed scratches after being in his pocket for a day. He demanded that the screen needed to be made out of glass. The glass that existed at the time shattered about 100% of the time that it was dropped. Apple worked with Corning to create a shatter-resistant glass in the months leading up to the iPhone's release. That glass would go on to be known as Gorilla Glass, which is very common in smartphones today. During the manufacture process, the glass is toughened by an ion exchange. The material is immersed in a molten alkaline potassium salt at a temperature of about 400 degrees Celsius. That's 750 degrees Fahrenheit, people. Wonder what a French fry dipped in that would taste like. Probably better than an iPhone screen. In the early days, there were several controversies. One was Apple's beef with Adobe's Flash. Flash did not run on the iPhone, but it was really popular on the web way back in 2007. It culminated with Steve Jobs writing an open letter on Apple's website explaining why it would never run on the iPhone. The too long didn't read, it was a battery drain, and it created security concerns. Then there was AntennaGate with the iPhone 4. If your hand covered the antenna lines along the side of the phone, it didn't work so well. Steve Jobs' response, don't hold it that way. A few weeks later, Apple's PR department took over and decided to give consumers free cases to improve cell phone reception. Then there was Bendgate on the iPhone 6 Plus. Kids were going into Apple stores and bending iPhones just for funsies. Consumer Reports ended up looking into it and found that the iPhone bending thing was just kind of blown out of proportion. Wasn't a real problem. During testing, an Apple engineer left an iPhone 4 prototype in a bar. It was found and sold to a journalist. After publishing the details, Apple sent Cupertino's Marines after the guy. The Cupertino Marines don't have guns. They're lawyers. They're far more dangerous. Apple also got a lot of bad press for using software to slow down older iPhones. This was done for battery health and safety, but probably shouldn't have been hidden from consumers. One of the original iPhone concepts looked like a really chunky iPod Nano. The iPhone 4 design was based on an early prototype of an iPhone 1 mock-up. Johnny Ive was a huge Sony industrial design fan from back in the day, and many of those early concepts were based on old Walkman prototypes. In this iPhone prototype, the designers took Johnny's name and made it look like a Sony logo. For years, a picture of Bono was hidden on your iPhone. After putting a free U2 album on the iPhone, Tim Cook learned that he was the only guy left alive who likes you too. Tim's about to learn the same thing about Jennifer Aniston. The iPhone 5 was the first iPhone to add Touch ID. The iPhone 7 got rid of the clickable button.
Here's a freebie fact for you. The easiest and fastest way to build a professional website is to use Squarespace.
I took it for a spin and built a portfolio to showcase my illustration work. They have some really nice templates. They're just easy to customize. Portfolio templates, e-commerce templates, blog templates. That's just scratching the surface. All of these templates are a great starting point for whatever you want to create. And as a former web designer, I like to fiddle. So I like that I could jump in and get really granular with the design. If you're showing off your work to potential clients or you're looking to land a full-time job, these templates look really professional. And if you want to take your website to the next level, you can set up your own domain or transfer one you already have.
Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/BradColbo to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
Apple's first phone prototype dates way back to the 1980s. It even had a stylus. Steve Jobs hates styluses, or did he? I made a video on that. I bet you thought I was going to mention the Newton next. Well, you're right. Came out in the 90s, and it was a very early version of the smartphone. It fit in the palm of your hand, just like the iPhone. Okay, more like the iPhone Max. During development, the original iPhone was so super secret that only current Apple employees could be brought onto the project. And Scott Forstall could not tell them what project they were going to be working on ahead of time. The code name for that project was Purple. When Jobs first introduced the iPhone in 2007, he had to follow a precise scripted sequence of inputs that the team developed for him so he could avoid crashing the phone during the demo. At the time, Cisco owned the trademark for the name iPhone. They were using it for a voice over IP service similar to Skype. Both companies settled, and now they both own the rights to the name iPhone. Prior to the launch of the iPhone, Google was already developing its own phone operating system, but it did not plan on supporting touchscreens. That changed after the launch of the iPhone. I'm not sure why, probably just a coincidence. The average American spends more than 3 hours a day on a smartphone. Apple developed tools to make people more aware of where their time goes. In iPhone ads, the time is always 9:42 a.m. The original Apple Maps icon suggests motorists should drive off an overpass. Nobody did, which is why this fact is not included in the controversy section. The first iPhone advertisement was called Hello, and it ran during the 79th Annual Academy Awards on February 25th, 2007. Apple reportedly paid $1 million to Michael Kovac in July 2007 for the transfer of the iPhone.com domain name over to Apple. Today, the iPhone accounts for 59% of Apple's profits. The other 41% is from the sale of dongles. And yes, I consider the watch a fancy dongle. Don't at me. In 2007, the iPhone was named Invention of the Year by Time magazine because it was deemed to be so revolutionary. 2007, people still read Time magazine. Tim Cook is about to learn that too. The A12 Bionic chip inside the iPhone is built using 7 nanometer technology. Only 13 people in this world know what that means. 7 of them are leaving a comment on this video right now because it's very important to them that we know who they are. Early iPhone releases saw people waiting in line for days before the release of new phones. Once, a guy in Japan waited in line for the iPhone 6 for 7 months before it was released. He's still single, ladies. In 2016, Apple removed the headphone jack from the iPhone 7. You don't need a headphone jack. You don't need a headphone jack. You don't need... Did that work? No? Fine, here's an adapter. iPhone screen too big to navigate with just your thumb. Swipe down at the bottom of the screen and you'll put everything in reach. Swipe left or right along the bottom edge of your phone to jump back and forth between apps. Swipe up from the bottom of the screen to get to controls. Swipe down from the top of the screen to get your notifications. Finger swipe back and forth several times to bring up the iOS update dialog every 2 minutes instead of every 4 minutes. You can also use your keyboard as a trackpad. Okay, I lied about the update notification. Don't do that with your fingers. You're gonna break your accelerometer. The Compass app is hiding a level tool. What? Just swipe over. If your wife is always yelling at you for taking pictures of whiteboards or notes and you're messing up your photo app flow, you can hide those from your albums. Just tap on the share button and choose hide. You can make the iPhone's camera light blink whenever you get a notification. Want more battery life? Go to the settings. See what apps are zapping the most juice. There was no iPhone 2. It went from the original iPhone to iPhone 3G because the second iPhone worked on AT&T's 3G network, which at the time was a big deal. The iPhone has always had a camera. The original wasn't that impressive though. It was only 2 megapixels. A second camera, a front-facing camera, was added in 2010 to the iPhone 4. This was included for Apple's killer new feature, which they called FaceTime. Currently, you can have up to 31 other people on a FaceTime call with you. That's just in case you don't get enough meetings at work. In 2006, a third camera was added to the iPhone 7. That made 2 along the back, 1 wide angle, 1 telephoto to to create a depth of field effect. It is expected that the next iPhone will have 3 cameras on the back. At this rate, by the year 2046, there will be 13 cameras on the iPhone and 3 U2 albums. The iPhone 4 was the first with a Retina screen. The iPhone 5 added the Lightning cable, which was much smaller than the old 10-pin connector used since the iPod days. There's no iPhone 9. You can stop looking now. Today, the cheapest new iPhone you can purchase is $450. That's more than twice what it would have cost just a couple years ago. You know that your headphones can be used to control your music, but did you also know that it works as a remote control for the camera app? Do you like listening to your music or podcast when falling asleep? Well, set a timer. It'll turn it off automatically. Wish the calculator had a delete key? You don't need it. Just swipe backwards and the numbers will delete. You like Siri, right? It was introduced with the iPhone 4S. And you can also change Siri to different voices and accents.
I'm Siri, your virtual assistant.
Oh, that's a good one. You can even make Siri read your texts. Out loud, not to his or her friends. Your iPhone has a measuring app that uses your camera. You can measure anything: walls, chairs, cats, pickles, anything. You can call someone directly from the Messages app, just in case the conversation gets a little too confusing or you just want to be a jerk. You can set custom text messages for all your friends. You'll know which ones to answer and which ones to ignore. Right, Dale? I'm still mad about those Avengers spoilers, Dale. Tired of running out of data? You can block data uses on an app-by-app basis on your cellular network. You can also set up auto-reply texts. Holy cow, you have 147 tabs open in Safari? You can close those all at once by tap and holding on the tab icon. And if you need one of those tabs back, tap and hold on the plus side. You can quickly add a period to the end of a sentence just by double tapping on the space bar. Lastly, Apple holds a press conference every year in September to announce the new iPhones, and this video was made before the iPhone 11 was announced. So I am sorry if I missed your favorite fact. Since you made it to the end, why don't you like and subscribe? And if I missed your favorite factoid, let me know down below in the comments. Thank you guys for watching to the end. I so appreciate it, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.